To the uninitiated, the Tarkans might have appeared to have been core worlders. They had the accent and they certainly had the sense of superiority to fit the bill. But their homeworld, Eriadu, was actually located in the Outer Rim, much to the chagrin of its people. Eriadu wasn't like most Rim worlds, however. It was known as the Coruscant of the Outer Rim, and its proud people compensated for their homeworld's location by being more core than the core. Their homeworld was heavily urbanized and wealthy, a planet with a longer history than most Rim worlds, and not a pleasant one either.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Eriadu was located at the heart of the Outer Rim's Seswenna system, in the 4th orbital position around its star. It was a fairly standard planet, terrestrial with a breathable atmosphere, standard gravity and a single moon. Its environment had once been pleasant, with lush, forested continents, warm seas and beautiful seashores. But by the time of the Clone Wars, Eriadu's natural beauty had long since been destroyed, replaced by urban sprawl. Huge vertical cities dominated large parts of the planet, while the rest of Eriadu was covered by industrial zones and waste zones. Extractive industries operated without restriction, poisoning the planet's seas and continents, and its atmosphere was choked with industrial waste, which gave its sky an orange haze. While most industrialized planets made use of water purifiers, atmospheric scrubbers, and other advanced waste disposal systems, such technologies were absent on Eriadu, which had long ago been irreparably poisoned by reckless industrialization, killing virtually all of the planet's native animal species. But Eriadu was nonetheless a wealthy world. It sat at the crossroads of several major hyperspace routes, which gave it a stranglehold over trade in the southern rim. The Hydian Way and Rumor trade route met at Eriadu, and the Lipsec-run Yankirk route and Nothoian corridor also passed through the Eriadu system. And its vast urban zones were incredibly productive, producing manufactured goods, computer parts, droids, and textiles, while orbital shipyards built starships, including warships. The largest corporation on the planet, Eriadu Manufacturing, employed a sizable chunk of the planet's 22 billion inhabitants, the vast majority of whom were human. All told, Eriadu was a productive industrial world, if also a miserable cesspit. Its capital was Eriadu City, located in the planet's southern hemisphere. The only thing more miserable than Eriadu's environment was its culture. Eriaduan society was strictly hierarchical and wildly unequal, with those at the top believing themselves superior to those below them. The planet was ruled by an oligarchy of 5 aristocratic families called the Quintad, whose arrogance and self-importance was unrivaled across the entire galaxy. The vast majority of Eriadu's wealth and political power was concentrated in their hands. Humanocentrism was rampant on Eriadu, which liked to frame itself as a bastion of civilization in the wild, alien Outer Rim, and even during the time of the Republic, Eriadu had a population of around 3 billion slaves. The title of Coruscant of the Outer Rim really doesn't go far enough in describing Eriadu. The planet embodied everything wrong with the galactic capital without any of the good. Eriadu was a late addition to the Republic, having only been discovered sometime around 5000 BBY. Once, it was a fairly unremarkable world, known mostly for the production of jewelry made from the shells of Eriaduan flow mollusks. It did have some industry. During the Jedi Civil War, for example, it made stealth generators and strength gauntlets, but this was mostly small scale for most of the planet's early history. As more trade routes began to pop up in the galaxy's southern region, Eriadu started to see more traffic, but it wasn't until the arrival of the Quintad in 900 BBY that Eriadu became the Coruscant of the Outer Rim. The Quintad were 5 wealthy families, originally from Korulag, one of the oldest of the core worlds. They came to Eriadu looking to build up a manufacturing hub in the Outer Rim, and under their rule, the planet transformed, becoming the polluted industrial titan we're familiar with. This made the Quintad extremely wealthy, particularly the most powerful and ruthless of the 5 families, the Tarkans. The Tarkans dominated Eriadu by the time of the Separatist Crisis, earning positions of power in both the Seswenna sector and the wider Republic. Starting around 57 BBY, the patriarch of the family, Governor General Randolph Tarkin, began seeking to expand Eriadu's military power. Tarkin was frustrated with the abundance of piracy as well as the growing power of non-human civilizations in the Outer Rim, and he blamed this state of lawlessness on the Republic's lack of a centralized military. Tarkin was an early member of the Republic's militarist political faction, but unlike most militarists, the bulk of whom were specious politicians that did little more than whine on the holonet, Tarkin decided to take action. Under his command, the Seswenna Defense Forces began a massive military build-up using lend-lease agreements with foreign shipbuilders to get around the Ruusan Reformation's limits on fleet size. Then Tarkin began reaching out to the sectors surrounding Seswenna, many of which were impoverished backwaters, offering them economic assistance if they agreed to combine their military forces. In this manner, Randolph Tarkin created the Republic Outlands Region Security Force, a shared military force to patrol what Tarkin called the Greater Seswenna, a large theater of operations that covered much of the Southern Rim. Ostensibly, the Outland Region Security Force was a simple mutual defense project, but anyone with half a brain could see that that wasn't true. The ORSF was completely dominated by the Tarkins and was used to enforce Eriaduan interests, with the Seswenna's neighboring sectors forced into contributing to the project by what amounted to neo-colonial trade agreements. That the ORSF only recruited humans and referred to its theater of operations as the Greater Seswenna only made this clearer. Some of the Republic's saner senators called Tarkin out on this, and in response, he resigned from the position of Governor General in 54 BBY, passing the position to his cousin, Garvadon. Tarkin instead became Eriadu's senator, a position he used to argue for militarist policy in the Senate. In 44 BBY, the ORSF saw its first real battle with the outbreak of the Stark Hyperspace War, but this first outing proved disastrous and Randolph Tarkin was killed in the fighting. This dealt a major blow to the project, but only for a short time. Just 2 decades later, the Clone Wars erupted and the militarists' dreams were realized with the establishment of the Grand Army of the Republic. The ORSF was merged into the 18th Sector Army, which was headquartered on Eriadu, with the Greater Seswenna becoming the 18th Army's oversector. During the war, Eriadu was pretty much the only loyalist stronghold on the Rimmer trade route, and it fought a constant back and forth war with its neighbors, eventually retaking Selust and much of the Rimmer by the time of the Outer Rim sieges. 2 Tarkins were anointed heroes of the Republic during the Clone Wars: Brigadier General Gideon Tarkin, who commanded Republic forces in the Greater Seswenna, and Admiral Wilhof Tarkin, who later became the Oversector's Moff. After the end of the Clone Wars, Eriadu became an Imperial Stronghold, and Moff Tarkin became an increasingly powerful figure in the new Empire. Early in the Imperial period, Tarkin was promoted to Grand Moff, the first person to hold the title, and he was given command of Oversector Outer, which covered the entire Outer Rim. Tarkin oversaw the imperialization of the Outer Rim from Eriadu, and under the Empire, the planet became even wealthier due to its status as one of the Imperial Navy's primary shipyards. But Eriadu's fortunes took a turn after Tarkin was killed aboard the first Death Star in the Battle of Yavin. Command of Oversector Outer passed to Grand Moff Ardus Kane, who relocated the Oversector's headquarters from Eriadu to Entrala on the opposite side of the galaxy. This cost Eriadu some prestige, but not all. Furthermore, some of the Oversector Outer's command personnel refused to relocate and continued to prioritize defense of the Greater Seswenna. These were led by Admiral Sander Delvedus, who had married into the Tarkin family. After the Battle of Endor, Admiral Delvedus promoted himself to the rank of Superior General and proclaimed himself the warlord of the Eriadu Authority, an imperial splinter state that controlled the Seswenna sector, several of its neighbors, and much of the Rimmer trade route. The Eriadu Authority promptly became one of the primary targets of the New Republic, which retook the Rimmer and dealt Delvedus a string of serious defeats at Selust, Sluis Van, and half a dozen other key Eriadu Authority worlds. The Eriadu Authority endured, and the Seswenna sector remained under Imperial control for years afterwards, but it was greatly reduced in power and scope, and the campaign caused Delvedus to fall out of favor with the Quintad, leading to years of squabbles between the 5 families and the warlords that eventually caused the Eriadu Authority to crumble. Delvedus and the Imperial forces loyal to him bled to the deep core, and in their absence, Eriadu caved to economic pressure and joined the New Republic. Under the New Republic, slavery was abolished on Eriadu, though the planet remained a key local economic power. Eriadu escaped the horrors of the Yuuzhan Vong War and became very prestigious because of this in the years afterwards. Superior General Delvidus, meanwhile, hid out on camp in the deep core with what remained of the Eriadu authority, pouring what resources he had left into the construction of the Executor-class star dreadnought Night Hammer. He re-emerged after Palpatine's return to ravage the core world Metalos, but after the reborn Palpatine's final demise, he was driven back to the deep core. He and a dozen other Imperial warlords were killed at Tassos Beacon by Admiral Natasi Dala in 12 ABY, following which Dala seized control of his forces, including the Night Hammer, and consolidated them in the hands of the sole remaining Imperial remnant, which, ironically enough, was originally based at Grand Moff Kane's stronghold of Introlla. So that's the story of Eriadu and the miserable men who ruled it. But what do you think? Are there other Imperial strongholds you'd like us to talk about? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.